All right, honey. So do you know what the greatest weakness for the entrepreneur is?
No, what is it?
Well, I don't know if it's the greatest weakness, but it's one of them is patience or lack thereof.
Oh, patience, honey.
Yeah, it's not the amount of patience they have, it's the lack of patience that they have.
Oh, the other way. Okay.
So entrepreneurs, right, we're known for the great visionaries, they're great starters, they're great doers, but they often lack some patience.
Yes, I think I would agree with you on that.
Now, it can be a strength because while a lot of people just talk about doing something, or starting a business or making this change or starting this new campaign, marketing campaign, the entrepreneur just wants to make it happen. Just let's go do it. Versus a lot of people will be slow to respond. And for me, even I'll admit, I can be a perfectionist. So which means sometimes I'm slow to start moving in a direction. So, but having someone that's a little bit more impatient that wants to get going is helpful because you can't wait for perfection.
Right, and it kind of balances you out, don't you think?
Yeah. So that's the good side of things of lack of patience. But the downside is that it can cause the entrepreneur to pivot a little bit too quickly or get caught up in the shiny object syndrome, or the SOS that we talk about.
And I wouldn't know anything about that, honey.
No, not at all, honey. No, you never want to change direction or stop doing something because you're bored or whatever.
Yeah, I want to try something new, or there's a shiny thing and I get distracted,
Mm-hmm. Yep, squirrel. And so this can cause the business to lose any momentum that it's created. And so if you found yourself going from one business direction to another, or one marketing campaign to another without getting the kind of results that you wanted, then you might want to look at the patience. Because sometimes just because you didn't get the results you want in the time period you want doesn't mean it's not a good idea. It just means you have to fix what's not working.
Yeah, and sometimes it's just a small little tweak.
Yeah, so we're going to share with you our stories over the last few years, things that have taken 3 years to now finally see the fruit of it. Versus there's some other things that we've done that we started earlier this year that we're starting to see the fruit of it now. So it's only been a matter of months. But even though it's a matter of months, or like say 6-7 months, I mean, for some entrepreneurs, they're still impatient. They would have quit 3 months earlier, right? So we're going to talk about that and really help you understand the value of patience and what does pivoting really mean, and when do you pivot to make the change that needs to be had. So ready for this, honey?
I'm ready.
All right. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. We're your hosts, Robert and Kaylee Fukui. I know we're supposed to say we created this podcast for you, but we really created this for us. Because one of the power struggles we witnessed growing up and now dealing with in the present is balancing the needs of the business with priorities of marriage. Does this sound familiar?
As children of entrepreneurs, we're often on the receiving end of that struggle. Parents worked so hard to provide that they did not have time for us. We realized it wasn't their fault. They did only what they knew. But not wanting to repeat the past, we've been intentional about building a business that we run as opposed to it running us.
Every day we fight to keep the priorities the priority: faith, family, and finance, or the business. Some think it's impossible, but we say it's possible. You just need to challenge the false belief that a successful business only comes at the sacrifice of your family. It doesn't have to happen that way, and we know we're not the only couple to think this way and achieve it.
If you listen to some of our past episodes and tune in for future ones, you will hear from some amazing marriage experts and entrepreneur couples that have been able to build a thriving marriage and prosperous business at the same time.
So that's why we created this podcast, to be in the front row and hear from others that have gone before us. And from time to time, we'll share what has worked for us as well. But we know there's more to learn and want to take you along for the ride with us. We may never get it perfect, but with intention, we can all build a thriving marriage and prosperous business. So thank you for listening. Sit back, get comfortable, and let's power up your marriage and business. All right, honey, so I know you're very patient, aren't you?
I'm very patient. Thank you, honey.
Speaking words of affirmation over here. So, yeah, this is going to be a fun topic, I believe. Talking about patience. It is a virtue, although it is one of the entrepreneur's weakness, as we talked about in introduction. And so we want to talk about that because I'm actually more the patient one than you, right?
What are you trying to say, honey?
It's a question. Yes or no?
I'm patient.
You can be.
Yes, you're known for your patience, honey.
Yeah, and of course, you're known for your big ideas.
Oh, yeah, I have so many. Do you have time right now?
Nope.
Okay.
We gotta stay focused on the task at hand, honey, and that's today's episode, this week's episode on patience, which is the entrepreneur's can be the entrepreneur's greatest weakness. And so let's talk about that. As we talked about, there's one of the problems with, I'll not say a problem, but we want things very quick, right? We're living in a microwave society, so we want everything to happen really fast. We want our sales funnel to work the first time out. We want to have a huge return on our marketing dollars. Everything, every new product or service we put in or we start, that we want to just generate tons of sales, right?
Yeah, you want your podcast just to go viral like after one episode.
Yep, podcasts, exactly. So we've been doing this for 3 years, and they say the average podcaster stops at 6 months.
And I could totally understand that.
They call it the podcast fade because, as you said, people think we're just going to start this podcast, it's going to go viral, all these people are going to download, and we're going to
make
all these
tons
leads.
of money.
Yep. And that's unfortunately not quite how it works. And so you have to have patience because within 6 months, you're just kind of starting to get your stride. I mean, I remember when we started ours, where, as I look back at the episodes in the beginning, I mean, it's definitely not, it was pretty rough. They were good, and we had some great guests, but definitely just you and I, we were pretty rough.
Yes, that's very true.
So if you listen to the first episode, you can compare to how we interact now, and just our content and just the way we speak.
Yeah, I probably didn't speak very much when we first started out because I was so intimidated.
Mm-hmm. And then get in the flow of just being interviewed guests. And then you start to get into the rhythm of not just the guests and how we talk, but even the subject matter, right? And to get the flow. So that's just one example, just with podcasting. It just takes a while to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, because things keep evolving. I mean, we've changed our name, we changed the branding. It's like trying to find the right market and just find your niche.
Yeah, and in our business in general, as we needed patience. And then this year, we've needed patience because we launched our book and back a year ago. So this is our 1-year anniversary of launching our book.
Yay us! Woohoo!
And with that, we wanted to be able to get more speaking engagements. We wanted to get on other podcasts, right?
Correct.
And those all took time to reach out to people, get to the right people, get their contact information, and especially with speaking engagements, these things are planned in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
year
not
or two in advance.
It's not like you contact somebody and we're going to have you on next week. Just like the conference in Alaska we're going to be going to next week. That that was in the works since last year.
Yes,
it was. I think we were talking about it in September.
Because they take a lot of time to put together.
Of last year, it was originally. I think we were going to do it in December or January or maybe March. I think the spring.
Yeah.
Spring of this year. Ended up postponing that to this
pushing
next
it
week.
back so we'd have more time to get things organized and be better prepared.
Yeah, and then we got some stuff coming up in the spring of next year, and we've had another one coming up next month, a big conference that we're going to be doing a workshop in. And, that was contacting them in January for a November workshop, right?
Yeah.
It's almost a year. And so anyways, all to say is it takes patience to get things moving. And a lot of times because we don't see the returns that we are expecting in the time period that we're expecting, we end up shifting or pivoting a little bit too quick.
And I think you have to be very intentional about what you want and give it time. Because I could totally see, when you're talking about the podcast, a lot of them don't make it past 6 months. I would probably have been one of those too if I wasn't married to you, because I know when you do something, you're all in, you're committed for the long haul. So when you asked me if I wanted to do it, I had to think about it because I thought, oh no, this is going to be forever. And there's been some times you're just like today, at the last minute, Robert's like, you want to do a podcast? And I'm like, we're getting ready to go out of town in 2 days. And I'm like, what? I'm not even packed. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, we're going to speak on patience. And I'm like, oh, that's a great topic to speak on right before. And I'm trying to get all my stuff done. So it all worked out fine. I just pivoted a little bit and pick yourself up and get going again.
Yeah. And so one of the things about, with entrepreneurs and their patience or lack thereof sometimes is you get caught up in shiny object syndrome. And especially when it comes to marketing, you want to reach for one thing after another because what you're doing isn't working or working as fast as you'd like. And so you start to pivot, pivot, quote unquote, pivot, but really you're getting caught up in SOS or shiny object syndrome. And so that's a danger. So we really want, as we delve into patience, we gotta, I think, I guess we just gotta talk about it. So based on our own experience. So part of, I guess, my, strength of being patient also comes from, fortunately I've worked for companies that didn't demonstrate patience. And they were around for they've been around for over 150 years. So to do that well for that long, you have to have obviously perseverance because things don't always go right? You're going to go through cycles in your business where things are bad and then when things are really good. And you have to be able to persevere through those downtimes. And whenever you're launching a new product or a new campaign, you have to have patience because it doesn't always work out right away. And you have to be willing to pivot, but not the way people think about pivoting, just changing their mind and going a different direction. But it's really about making the adjustments to what you're doing. So when we talk about pivoting, a lot of times when they talk about pivoting, they're just talking about full blown, do something different, totally different from what they're currently doing. So a totally different marketing campaign, going from focusing on LinkedIn, for example, to focusing on, Instagram, or running, going from doing a podcast to doing, something different from
TikTok now
from a marketing perspective. But we talk about pivoting as you're moving along. We're really talking about just making those adjustments that you're still locked to the core. So, and when he calls it pivot, so I remember I played basketball. So when you're pivoting in basketball, that means you're standing still, but one foot has to be anchored on the floor and you can take the other foot and move it around and you're pivoting around the anchor foot. Because if you lift that anchor foot, then it's called traveling, and it's a foul. Or not a foul, but it's a penalty, and then you lose the ball. So pivoting is you're still anchored to the core thing of what you're doing, but you're just making some adjustments.
And sometimes they're just small little tweaks that is all you have to make.
Yeah,
it's not like throw the baby out with the bathwater and start all over every couple months.
Yeah, and so one of the things when we started our business, not when we started business, but 3 years ago when we launched our podcast, part of the intent was to, talk about it as marketing, to get some awareness out there to the audience, to reach a broader audience. But it was also to meet people, right? We met some great people.
Oh my gosh, we met so many fabulous people.
And we're continuing,
and guests.
Yeah, we're continuing to meet more and more, just some great people, great guests. And then the other part was from a truly, I guess, from a search engine optimization point of view, for those of you that are into that stuff, we wanted to be able to add content on our website. So the more content you build up that's targeted on certain keywords that you're going for, that people might be searching for when it comes to us, like marriage and business coach, the continuous weekly content, because our podcast was designed to go weekly, that continually updated weekly content on our website would help build authority for our website in the eyes of Google. Part of search engine optimization is having copy in your website that has, some of the keywords that people are looking for, but you always have to be continually putting up new and new content, because one of the ways Google's going to rank you for those keywords, if they see, is if you have relevant content, and part of it is, are you continually putting new stuff up? Because if you just put up a website, put up some articles, and you just let it sit for 2 years, you're not going to gain a lot of authority. And so the weekly podcasts was one of those ways to build the authority of our website.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of like double dipping.
In a way.
You could use it for more than one thing.
Yeah.
To benefit.
Sure. And we use the podcast, obviously, it just goes on all the podcast players to reach an audience there, but it also we post on social media, got posted that way, and it's also on our website, start posting that way. And so there's different ways we can use the content to reach an audience in many ways. But the anchor thing I wanted to do was build the authority on our website. And so because of that, that was one of the reasons why I want to be consistent with it and be patient with it. Even though we have pivoted a little bit in our podcast, as you mentioned earlier, about the title, really the direction. And in fact, we're going to move a little bit of a different direction next year as well. That I think we're excited about.
Yes, we are. We'll tell you more when it gets closer, you guys. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, but the anchor thing of what we're using the podcast for, one, is to reach the audience. The audience is going to be the same. The direction of the episodes might be slightly different, but I think it's going to be deeper. I think it's going to make a bigger impact. But the core of what we're doing with the podcast is still the same.
And you're going to love, you guys. We've already made some podcasts. They're just not live yet, with some fabulous guests and stories. You guys are going to love them.
Yeah. And so this is an example of the podcast itself. We've pivoted throughout the 3 years, but the core of what we're doing is still the same. And it was putting up the additional content. So a lot of times, I've talked to, friends. I have a couple of friends I talk to just regularly that, are in kind of a similar space that we are, coaching, consulting. And then we have clients and so forth, and just being in different mastermind groups and whatever. And a lot of times this shiny object syndrome, the SOS, comes up a lot. People are constantly shifting on the marketing that they're doing, and they don't gain any momentum in any one thing. So they lose the big mo, is what we call it. And
it's costing them a lot of time and money, because they keep changing and they keep investing more into it.
Yeah, I remember just talking to a friend recently about the fact that, he keeps changing his strategy. And I said, just pick one thing and then go for it. And you don't do it long enough and make the appropriate changes as you move along to get anything to really work. You just shift into a totally different strategy instead of trying to figure out what you're already doing. How do you make it work better?
Well, and sometimes people shift so often that I don't even know what they do anymore, because it's like, well, what are you doing now? You know what I mean? It's like, I'm doing something different now, and it's like every 3 months, and I can't keep track, and it's hard to refer people to them when I don't even understand myself what they're doing.
Yeah, there's that, because they're selling something different. Their offer's a little bit different. And so, he off and on, he's done a podcast. And I said, if you just be consistent with the podcast, do it once a week. And just like, don't have to copy exactly what I do, but, talk about how we multi-purpose the content, put on LinkedIn your articles. But the one thing that consistently do is put it on your website and use that as your blog to build up your authority on your website. Because with all the changes you've been doing over the last 4 years, if you would have stuck with just the podcast itself, one, you definitely would have got more traction. But also, as you're putting up the podcast on your website, you eventually would have got more traction and the right kind of traffic to your website too. But because it's an off and on thing, there's never really any momentum built, or any momentum it is built, it's lost once you shift.
Well, and I've noticed too, people have been running into lately that have podcasts that have been around for 6 or 7 years, or some even longer, and they have a pretty big following. You'd be surprised. And I can't help but think a lot of that's got to be with consistency.
Oh, for sure. A lot of the podcasts that are, just thinking about podcasts that are doing well, they've got, hundreds of episodes, a lot more than we do. And yeah, they've been doing it for a long time. And yeah, consistency is a huge thing. And, with consistency, you also learn a lot.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah,
because
definitely.
Not everything works out, like I said, the first time, even just for us. Just trying to find our lane, even in our podcasts. It just took a while to kind of figure it out. And even though you can read all the, information out there about how to do podcasts, how to blow up your podcast and all that kind of stuff. And, it's kind of interesting. The only people that make a lot of money on these things are the people that are selling how to do your podcast better, right? It's like the only people that really make money on these things isn't the persons that subscribing or purchasing to these great strategies, but it's the people that are selling the strategy.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
So I feel maybe that's what you should be doing.
Well, and also, like you said earlier, it took us a while to get our stride.
Yeah. You find our audience, find our niche sweet spot, even how we talk to each other, and then getting into the groove of the guests. So I think, one thing I'm excited about with our change for next year is I really feel this is a significant change in the right direction because, I just do.
Well, I feel like we were working together a lot better, too, than we used to when we very first started out.
Yeah. And the other benefit is because of that, we've gotten to learn how to speak with each other better. Now, here we are, the last half of 2023, and we're going to be doing more public speaking together, right?
Yes.
We've already had a couple so far, and we've got a few more lined up this year, and we got more for next year. And so I think that's helped us, right?
Oh, yeah, that's helped us a lot. And I think I contribute a lot of that from the podcast because you told me I didn't want a podcast at the beginning. And, but obviously I did. I thought about it, prayed about it, and I felt like we were supposed to do it. And you told me podcasting is going to be you'll be way more comfortable podcasting as opposed to getting in front of people. And you were right. And that's really helped me a lot. Mm-hmm. Especially now getting in front of people is knowing, okay, I've spoke before, might not be in front of people like live because, podcasting is pre-recorded, but it still gives you that practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And especially doing it with each other. We've had guests, so learning how to,
maneuver,
coordinate that, of course, and just play off each other. And so, yeah, that's still been good practice even for public speaking now that we're doing more public speaking.
Getting things resolved 5 minutes before we're to go live. I'm upset about something, and Robert's like, oh, great, honey, now?
Exactly.
Or maybe even 2 minutes before we go live.
Yeah, and then even beginning of the year, so one of your roles that I asked for you to do was to get us on more podcasts.
Yes.
Right? Because we had published a book, and so wanted to use the book as that open door to get on different podcasts. And then even, I don't know, probably a couple months in, I think you got bored.
I get bored so easily, honey. Especially when I don't see results. It's that whole patience thing.
Mm-hmm. She didn't see results right away. And so actually, that's not quite true. We were getting on podcasts pretty quickly. We just weren't getting on as many as you wanted.
Right, because it takes a good amount of time.
Mm-hmm. And so, here we are, 3/4 of the year later, and you're just picking up momentum. And we're meeting more people. We're getting on bigger and bigger podcasts. And, of course, even the speaking engagements, like I said, just pushing through that boredom, that shiny object syndrome, and stay focused on the task at hand.
I'm laughing, honey, chuckling, because we just had this conversation with them today. I'm like, honey, do I still need to try and get us on podcast next year? Because I'm thinking, okay, at the end of this year, we're done, Yeah. I thought, I did pretty good. I lasted a whole year, honey.
Yeah. Well, it hasn't been a year yet, honey. You're already
getting close.
See how you round up? So it hasn't been a year, but yes, December 31st, it'll be a year. And
I'm proud of myself for sticking this long.
You've done well. And so, yes, you still need to get us, should be getting us on podcasts even next year because we haven't hit them all.
No, by no means.
You know how many podcasts are out there, but just the big ones, we haven't been on all of them. So, yeah, absolutely, keep doing it. I mean, this is part of our strategy, our long-term strategy to get the word out. So, and to market ourselves. So, yeah, we want to make sure we are. So, I guess this is a good question. Then, what do you do to push yourself through that boredom and not get attracted to shiny object syndrome, or what some entrepreneurs might get guilty of succumbing to because,
You mean what do I do? Or
just in general?
I talked with you about it because I was thinking, okay, we're getting to the end. We're almost in November now. Well, halfway through October. And I was thinking, okay, we're getting close to the end of the year, so I probably don't have to reach out to be guests on other podcasts anymore. So I thought I better ask you, because I'm thinking in my mind, end of the year's coming, so, I'm about done with this. And so I talked to you, and you said, no, honey, you got to keep going until next year, which I think was a good thing, because in my mind, I was ready to hit the easy button, thinking we're almost in December, and I'm done with this goal, because it was kind of like a goal of mine for the year. But then when you said, no, you got to keep going, it made me think I need to reframe my mindset and not think of it as in terms of, oh, I'm going to be done by December 31st.
Yeah.
What's so funny?
No, you're right.
And so that really helped you talking with me through it, because you encouraged me to keep going, and you also reminded me, even right now, of how many podcasts we have gotten on. So it's not like I've done all this work and we haven't seen any results. But sometimes when you're in the middle of the trenches, you don't always see it. I don't always look back and think, oh, look how far we've come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, and also with the whole, I guess, going back to just the whole, our own podcast, hosting our own podcasts, and what has that done? So, probably a little bit earlier in the year, I'd say probably 3 months or so into this year, we finally started getting some organic discovery calls. So we have these discovery calls. And feel free to go to marriedentrepreneur.co to schedule yours.
Yes, we would love to meet you.
We have these discovery calls for people that are interested in working with us, or just want to pick our brain on how to do this marriage and business better. And so it's a free half-hour call. You can go right to our website and click a link, and you see our calendar availability. You click it, you get your Zoom link and everything on your calendar invite. And so we've finally started getting people just organically getting on our website and seeing it, obviously probably reading up a little bit about us, and then scheduling a discovery call. So, before it's been primarily referral based, but with the continuing, the podcast and putting up content on our website and all that, and all the other forms of marketing that we do, that we finally started getting organically people scheduling calls. And, we'd ask them, right? Every time we hop on a call, oh, how'd you find us? And they all say, we just Googled basically marriage and business coach or something to that effect, and found out we ranked number 1 on Google for that. So that's all part of the SEOs and the keywords that we target, but also the consistency of our podcast and the content. And even some of the social media platforms also, contribute to SEO. But, it took a while, right?
Yes.
It took a while. Now, we didn't put all our eggs in one basket in the beginning and say, this is how we're going to get our clients, right? I knew it was going to take a while. And you never know how long it's going to take. And so that's a key thing is, you can hire some SEO person, but they can't guarantee anything, even though people do. They guarantee you, in 3 months, I'll get you number 1 ranking and Google. Well, ranking for what? Number 1 is always my question. Ranking for what? Because it could be a keyword like garbage truck, and that's not going to help us, right? Yeah. And so, anyways, all to say is we started, ranking number 1 for that, and then now we even had 2 discovery calls in one day last week, and so people are just now it's kind of becoming almost like a pipeline, and then even on our e-blast, so once a week, also publish an e-blast. Something about what we're doing, or sometimes I'm, once a month, it's really the last 4 podcast episodes I put on, but I'm always putting something out there to our email list. And again, that's things people abandon too. Mm-hmm. I know people that have big email lists, but don't do anything with it. Right. And so, and I know people are just very sporadic around it. And so, again, that consistency, that's the one thing. So the podcast has been once a week, but also the e-blasts have been once a week. And one of the discovery calls last week was someone that's been on our email list for a year. And she finally reached out, because I think one of the e-blasts I put out was, hey, you want to schedule a discovery call? Here it is. Here's the link. That's basically what my e-blast was about one week. So anyways, all to say is, you never know where your opportunity is going to come, and you never know how long it's going to take as you're implementing any type of business strategy.
Well, that's true, because when I'm thinking about our podcast, now that we're in year 3, we've met bigger and great guests. Oh my gosh, that we would never met, I don't think, in year one. I mean, the year one was good, but they're just different type of people. Mm-hmm. We're, I think, more intentional about what we're looking for in a guest.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, as we go into next year too, that's, again, that the whole pivot for our podcast for next year is because I think we really finally 3 years later finally realized who are the guests we really want.
The ones we really,
And
connected with.
Basically, a little teaser is it's all about their stories. They all have these incredible stories that you'll be amazed at.
Oh my gosh, on the edge of your seats, cry. Oh my gosh, these are just like so good.
Yeah, so I think we finally kind of figure out what are the type of guests and stories that we want on our show, and so that's exciting. It just took a while, right? Mm-hmm. And so, anyways, all that to say is patience is a virtue, like they say, and yes, I know it can be hard because when things don't happen as fast as you want, it's easy to want to gravitate towards something else. But what happens is, as you hopefully you've seen, is that new thing you do is still also going to take a while to get some momentum and have the success you want. And so really, as you look back at all the starts and stops you've had, whether it's whatever marketing strategy or other business strategy you've had that haven't quite worked out the way you want, you might think, well, maybe the original strategy or the strategies before were good. It's just your execution wasn't good. And so now it's just about changing that. Even I was just talking to a young man I'm mentoring, and he's talking about his business. And, I've been really encouraging him to build his team for his agency. And he started doing, had 1-2 people and all that. And then he's like, try this, and it's hard. It doesn't really quite work out. I end up having to do stuff myself or whatever. He's like, maybe I'm not a good leader. Maybe I just don't want to do this anymore. Maybe I don't want to build a team. So I said, well, okay, then if you don't build a team, how is your business going to sustain itself without you?
Yeah, how's it going to grow?
Right? I mean, if you're okay with being tied to the business and just keep working,
and it not getting any bigger than what you can handle.
Yeah, or also know that, because it's a service-based business, which means if you're not working, then you're not making money, right?
And you're tied there. You're not leaving for vacations, probably.
Yeah, or if you do, you just know you have to plan
because
you're just not making money. So he's like, yeah, I know, I want that. And so I said, okay, so you're gonna have to build a team, even if you want to sell courses. You still need to build a team to do the courses, record the courses, handle any customer issues. I mean, there's going to be stuff, right? Even if you're just selling courses, the more customers you get, the more chances for things to go wrong, and you're going to address these issues. And so, if you're not around, somebody's got to do it. All that to say, so we talked about his doing his, what he did as he was leading the 2 guys he had hired before. And so I said, it's not, and he's also kind of down himself saying, oh, maybe I'm not a good leader. And I said, look, there's no perfect leader, number one. You're still young, number 2.
And we all have to learn, right? I mean,
right.
It's not like we just step into leadership and you got the manual for every employee.
So give yourself a break on that. I mean, you're still young, you're learning. And so we kind of gave him some tips of, how to, the next go around of how you'd want to onboard people and train them and mentor them and all that. So I said, it's not that it's not even, he was even talking about, well, maybe those guys weren't the right fit. And I said, well, maybe not. I think they probably were. It's just a matter of, a lot of times we're looking for the perfect person to be great at everything. And we can be more hands-off on leading them from the beginning, when the reality is, regardless of how skilled anyone is coming into your business, you still need to have the time to really mentor them and train them, right? And so part of it is that. So I said, okay, number one is, it doesn't necessarily mean that the 2 you hired before weren't a good fit. It's just a matter of how you go on board onboarding them, setting the proper expectations, having a cadence of regular meetings with them to make sure they get their questions answered, make sure whatever thing that you want them, whatever skill you want them to improve upon, they're taking some action steps to making improvements, and just walking alongside them continuously and on a frequent basis, not just trying to turn them loose and hoping they're going to do a better job.
Well, and spending time with them, training them, that's in itself is a big thing.
Yeah.
Because we just think as entrepreneurs, oh, they'll just figure it out. They should know.
Yeah. So that's
But we're not setting them up for success.
Yeah, so that's another example of kind of you need to have more of a long-term thinking, have more patience with these things. As you're bringing people on, as you're bringing staff on, you need to have patience to really bring them on board and to really be able to train them and mentor them. Because a lot of times we say, oh, we can't do it, and, or they can't do it, I'm just going to do it myself, and you're back to square one, right? And so patience is even helpful even in that perspective as well in your business. So anyways, that's what patience is all about in our business. And I hope, sharing a little bit about our past, both, 3-4 years ago, and even this year, of the things we've had to talk through about being patient and sticking through the original plan, yet also we have made pivots within that, right? So we made pivots within these 3 years, but it's just that we stuck to the same core thing that we started with.
Well, I think pivoting is a good way to look at it for me, that gets bored so easily. You would just be like, oh, honey, we're just going to pivot and we're going to change this a little bit. And maybe that'll help me not get so bored.
Yeah.
I mean, all the stuff we're doing for next year, that's exciting to me. So
yeah,
that's
and
good.
Learn from what you've done so far and getting us on podcasts, and see how you can improve the process and make it maybe a little quicker, maybe how you can get a quicker response or whatever, right? Maybe there's things you can learn from that. So, well, hopefully that helped for you, honey.
Yes.
Patience. And hopefully it was helpful for you. And please share this with another entrepreneur that I know can use some patience, right?
Yes. And then
we all can.
We got freebies on marriedentrepreneur.co. So please go and check out our website and get those.
Yeah, and please leave a review. We'd love that on Apple, so that more people can find us, more entrepreneurs can find us, and have more patience, right? So until next week, God bless. Thank you for listening to the Power Up Your Marriage and Business podcast. If you found this episode to be valuable, please leave a rating and share it with an entrepreneur couple you know.
Yes, and to remember to hit the subscribe button so that you'll get all of our latest episodes, and visit our website, Power Couples by Design, to access a variety of free resources to help your marriage and business, like our weekly videos and on-demand webinars. And don't forget to download our free 8-step guide that you can find on our homepage to help your marriage and business thrive.
We're here to help you build a thriving marriage and a prosperous business. God bless your marriage and business. See you next week.